Hey everybody, this is Jeff from Build an Aquarium Workshop, and welcome back to the channel, and happy Easter. It is Easter Sunday, and it is my first video for 2026, if you can believe that. A lot has changed. I moved out of my house and in mid-January, and I had to scale the aquariums down from 5 to 4. We had 2 saltwater tanks. There are now 1 saltwater tank. But I've got 4 beautiful tanks set up, as you can see right here. This is our, if you remember from last year, our 14-gallon Aqueon rimless cube. And it's doing very, very well, as you can see. And I've got a couple of new fish that I put in a week ago. And today we're going to talk about this aquarium. Don't worry, I'll give you an update on all the other aquariums. Remember, we have a little 3-gallon Aqueon cube, beta cube. We have a 40-gallon breeder Tanganyikan cichlid tank. I scaled that one down from a 75. And we have a 35-gallon rimless cube Aqueon for our reef tank. So we used to have a 40-gallon. I still have it, but it's empty. And now we have a 35-gallon. All right, but today we're going to talk about this aquarium. And I want to make it brief. I just want to get this video out and say hello to everybody who's been very, very patient. I've had lots of questions about videos in the past. I really appreciate it. I wish I was more active. I plan to be more active. I have a full-time job. It took 3 weeks to move everything by myself, not taking any time off. It was a lot of work, a lot of stress. I did lose a couple of fish in the process and a couple of corals, so I'm very sad about that. But we've done okay since then. Everything is doing very, very well, and is very, very happy, very stable. And that's the key word there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this tank. And what we'll do is we'll talk about compatibility and introducing new fish. Because I introduced a couple of new fish, which I'm going to show you in this tank. And I can tell you it did not go very well. And even though it's a community tank, you would think shouldn't be a problem. Dealing with cichlids all the time, most of my life, I'm used to compatibility problems and the tricks of how to work fish into the aquarium. Sometimes that can't always be done. Oftentimes we're really talking about tanks that are, under 4 feet. Smaller tanks, which can be challenging, especially in this 14-gallon rimless cube, versus somebody who's got a 300-gallon or a 500-gallon tank. Then compatibility sometimes is a lot easier to work in, just because of the sheer space. Fish can get away like they do in the wild. But in a small tank, they see each other quite a bit, so it gets very difficult. Spaces run out where to hide. So anyway, okay, let's look at the aquarium, and I'll talk about what we did. Okay, so here's our 2 new fish. Actually, there's 3. I don't think I shot this algae eater that you see in the background. He's eating algae. He's doing his job. And then you can see the 2 Praecox rainbows that I had, the dwarf ones, the male and a female. And there you go. They're chasing. The bigger one's chasing the smaller one. So those are 2 Von Rio tetras or flame tetras. These are blue flame tetras, so they have blue and red, not just red. And there's 2 of them in there. And I got to tell you, when I first put them in, kind of scary because the angelfish is a good size. And one thing you should note is that fish get used to being in a tank, with other inhabitants, and after a while they get very territorial. It doesn't take very long, and when you add something new after a year or 2, it's like an intruder. You can imagine, in your own place, if somebody tried to come in, it would be like, what? Who is this? And what are you doing here? So it doesn't always go over very well. Such is the case with these 2 guys. But they're doing very well now, and you can see they're being ignored. Nobody really cares that much. They like to chase each other a little bit. And sometimes the Praecox rainbows chase them, or the algae eater might, especially if it's a certain little area it likes. In fact, I'm going to give them a little bit of food, see them come up. While you're checking them out, I'll put the food right there so you can see them. You can see them anyway, but here we go. There you go. Now they're hitting the food. They're always hungry. The angelfish is over here going, what about me? The food will work its way around. This hornwort plant I bought is just out of control. It's growing like a weed, and it's going to have to be cut. I cut a piece on the other side, and we're going to talk about how did I get these 2 fish worked in. Now, it should have been easy, just acclimate them, put them in, but the angelfish was really trying to put a hurting on them. He was not just chasing them. He was nipping hard at them, and they really shocked them when they first went in. and he was the one that I was really, really worried about. Um, and fish can mellow out. Like you can see, this algae eater, he became for a while there, he became really aggressive and chasing around the rainbows, and he even tried to chase the angel around until the angel, stuck up for himself. And the little glow light he was chasing around, he was just being a terror. And now he doesn't, every now and then he does, but he doesn't really care. Of course, having a lot of rocks and plant matter, that's a good one to keep fish, so that they get along. So they have spaces to run and spaces to hide in, which that was happening right here in this bush. Um, the one tetra had dug himself in there so the angel couldn't get him. That's how bad it was. And that was within the first, 30 minutes. And what I had to do is I had to go ahead and do something, which I'm going to show you right now. One trick, one thing you can try, besides having a bunch of plants, I introduced the plants, having rocks, of course, hiding spaces, that always helps. Also, moving around, so changing the environment, creating a fresh look, especially in the case of cichlids. But even here, you could move rocks around, rearrange them. That can help. Watering down aggression through adding enough fish, that could help. But this is a 14-gallon rimless cube. I don't want to add a lot of fish to this aquarium, so that's a huge problem because we normally I would say, hey, in this aquarium, in a bigger aquarium, we could add maybe 4 or 5 fish at a time, and that way they would give more targets for fish to, so to speak, for an aggressor to attack, and it would water down their aggression. So rather than it picking on one fish all the time or two, it has multiple targets, which then gives the other fish time to rest up. And once it, usually fish will settle down a lot and they'll be like, okay. Now, not all, some fish are really, really aggressive. These are not. These are community fish. The angelfish is semi-aggressive. I would say the algae eater is semi-aggressive. But here's one more thing you can try, which I did. Rather than rearrange the whole tank, I did add plants. And that did make a difference. So one thing I tried was my handy dandy breeder net. So this breeder net, it is a typical net. It's not just a breeder net. You could use it for injured, sick fish, right? You could put them in here, especially in the case of being injured. And it's just a simple suction cup. And all I did is I took this and I put it inside the aquarium up here in the front on the corner and suction cupped it there. And I took a piece of this hornwort, which you see now is right here. I planted it and it's grown to the top already. I mean, this thing is growing like weeds. I put that in here so that the fish would feel a little more comfortable. So I put the 2 flame tetras, blue flame tetras in there for about 3 days. And it's a net, so they could see the other fish in there. And that helped to feel like, okay, because sometimes it just needs time for the fish to get used to each other, and so that made all the difference in the world. So that's another thing you can try, as long as the fish can fit in there, right? And these are small fish. You wouldn't fit a 10-inch Oscar in something like this. I don't know that they make them big enough. That would be a whole nother thing. But you can try this if your fish will fit in here, okay? And it's a great tool besides using this for its other purposes, just to acclimate the fish, okay? And that's what I did. So I wanted to share that with you. That was today's episode, to say, hey, compatibility, I know what you go through, and it's always tough sometimes getting fish in. Worst case scenario, sometimes a lot of people, they'll take the aggressor out and they'll take him to the fish store and say he's just being too aggressive. Or they might take the new fish back and say, oh, they just didn't work in my tank. And that's a lot of stress on the fish, and it's disappointment for you and them, because you might lose a nice fish that you liked, or you might not get the fish that you want in there and that you think would be great. And so just so you know, there are tools and tricks to the trade to get fish in your aquarium. So don't forego this. This can work for you. And I mentioned some of the other things. And when we go to the cichlid tank, we'll do each tank separately. When I go to the cichlid tank, we'll talk about cichlid compatibility. That's where it really, really counts, right? I've got, with these tank-eating cichlids, they're very, very ferocious. And having new fish come in there is not something that they want. Sometimes it works out really, really well. If you remember last year, I added in that 75-gallon, the Burchardite, and he did a little bit of fighting. He fought, but he's in there. He got in there pretty smoothly without anybody getting damaged, which was great. But okay, we'll talk about that another day. All right, so thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you learned something today. If you did, hit the like and the subscribe, and we will be more active every weekend. My plan is to do a new video for you. Next week, we're going to go ahead and showcase our 3-gallon Aqueon Beta Cube. And that, we'll see how, we'll check in on that beta and see how he's doing. All right, so thanks for watching, and have a great Easter. We'll see you next time.